Dave Talks Comics, Episode 22. Dave Talks Comics is a collection of my thoughts, memories, and musings on comics I have read. Dave Talks Comics can be found on the web at davetalkscomics.com, on Twitter at DaveTalksComics. Email can be sent to dave@davetalkscomics.com. Normally I talk about comic books, but this is part 3 of my summary of Appleseed Comic-Con, which was May 17th and 18th. In Fort Wayne, Indiana. On this episode, I will be talking about the second day of the con. I was only there for the first couple hours of the show. And then the rest of the episode is about my trip back from Fort Wayne to the Washington, D.C. area. Appleseed Comic-Con Road Trip Part 2. I'm getting ready to take off now. It's a little after 1 o'clock. Actually, it's probably closer to 1:30 by now. Maybe 1:40 if that clock there is right. I just got a sandwich at a Vietnamese place, a pork sandwich. I also bought some spring rolls, but I stuck those in the cooler because I don't want to eat those right away. So I've probably got a good 12 hours or more before I'm going to get home. I'm trying to avoid sit-down meals on the way home. I think I'm going to stop for lunch at a Panera near Wheeling, West Virginia, that same place I stopped on the way out, right by the Sheets where I stopped on the way out. I'll probably refuel at that point too. I think I can make it that far without having I've got over 3/4 of a tank right now, so which should get me about 400 miles, and I don't think it's 400 miles to Wheeling. Could be wrong on that. I think it's more like 400 to Morgantown, but anyway. Yeah, so that's the sum of it. I had a good time today at the show. I walked around. I did buy a few more things. I bought a cartoon from Peter Bagg that he did for Mad Magazine, although he didn't remember exactly what it was for. There was no caption or anything on it, but I just liked it, and I'll post a picture of that later. I did post pictures. Well, there's no point in talking about that because this isn't going out live, but I did post pictures to my account on Imager, IMGUR, and then I linked those over to 11 O'Clock Comics on the Appleseed Comic-Con thread. And let's see, today, so I got that Peter Bagg piece. I got a piece from, oh God, now I'm not going to remember his name. Let me see, wait, here's the program guide. From Jim, let's see, Jim Terry. Jim Terry did a little 8x8 piece for me of the Vulture, the Spider-Man villain. Really nice. And let's see, I stopped by the what's the name? Action Labs table, and I picked up, what was the name of that book? It's right here. I picked up Jackhammer, Book 1, Political Science. I had a number of things that looked interesting. I didn't want to buy a whole bunch of stuff, so I decided to buy that one. That's a better way to put it. And from the O'Briens, from Tim O'Brien, I bought Space, which he did with John Dudley and Harry Moyer. And I think it's just 2 stories, but it's a mini comic. So I'm looking forward to reading that. And I spent some time talking to John and Tim, And then I walked a little further down the aisle, and I talked to a couple other guys. One had a book called Krampus, and I did not grab his business card, but let me see. I'm looking at let's see now, aisle B. Oh, Tim Barron. Yes, that's who it was. I talked to Tim Barron, and I talked to the guy at the Sweet So Geek table, and the business card only has, I don't know if I guess that's his wife's name on it, Heather Seawald. He introduced himself, but I can't remember his first name. But I talked to them for a while. We talked about cartoons, and we talked about Star Wars, and the Sweet So Geek table, I probably should have bought something from. They had some really neat sweets, which, they were chocolates, but they were chocolates that were filled with things and shaped in various shapes. They had all sorts of different brains, and so they would label them as a different kind of brain, like a naughty brain and that's the first one that comes to mind. But there was other kinds of brains, maybe evil brains, I don't know. But they each would be different kind of chocolate, different kind of filling. It was really neat. I went back right before I left, and I thought about buying something, but they had people in front of the table, and I didn't want to take too long, and so I just ended up leaving. Now, the only other thing I did right before I left was I went to the O'Brien's panel, like I said I was going to, and they did a panel on what if. Wait a minute, I've got the panel schedule. I've got the name of the panel right here. Making Comics for No One. And it was the two of them, and it was another guy who I don't think his name, he was there. He did have a table with a couple other people. Let me see if I can find, it was D something. No, it wasn't D. It was E. Jay Sternitsky. That was who it was. And they were talking about making comics basically for themselves, but at the same time they go to shows and they sell them. And I think Jay said he had sold about 1,000 copies of his comic. But the idea is that they're really doing it for themselves, and so it was kind of an interesting discussion. And as always with a lot of these creators, especially the indie creators, I try to relate these things in some way to my own experience. Even though I'm not a creator, I do stuff with spreadsheets, I create reports, I have to design reports. Okay, so how are the columns going to be laid out? What should be in the columns? What should be in the rows? Stuff like that. So I like to think there's a little bit of crossover there, or a little bit of comparison that can be made. So it was an interesting discussion. I thought of questions, and I considered raising my hand to ask, but there was plenty of other people with questions, and most of my questions weren't really fully formed. It was just kind of an idea of about this or about that, how does this come into play, or how does that come into play if you're only making comics for yourself, if you're not really focused on marketing. And the conversation eventually did get a little bit into marketing, and there was a few people in the audience who were creators. There was one guy there who was an author who writes books, science fiction books, and he had tabled at other conventions, not at, I don't know if at comic conventions, but. And so they were talking about stuff like how do you bring people in? And I find that stuff interesting, and I think I talked a little bit about that when I talked about day one of this convention. But it was a good time. I wish I could stay longer, although my wallet probably thanks me for walking out when I did. I didn't get an Appleseed t-shirt. I should have gotten an Appleseed t-shirt. I think they were just $15. And there's more things I could have bought, but you got to cut it off somewhere. You got to draw that line somewhere. And but it was a fun show. It was not a huge show. By no means did they fill the convention center. There was plenty of there's plenty of space to get around. And Well, I'll save this kind of recap. I'm sure I'll think of other things that I either did today or that I meant to do, or things I saw. But all in all, I had a very good time, and now it's time to drive back to DC, and I'm not looking forward to that, but hopefully it won't be any more onerous than the drive out was, and hopefully I will be home by, let's say 2 in the morning. I think it's a little before 2 o'clock in the afternoon right now. So that's it from Fort Wayne. For now, I may return next year. I'm not sure. It's way too early to say. It's way too far away from home for me to say at this point. I certainly enjoyed the show. I would like to come back, but I'll have to see what's on the schedule for next year. Appleseed Comic-Con Road Trip Part 2, Fort Wayne to D.C. I'm at my first rest stop just outside of Lima, Ohio. I think it's Beaver View or something like that. Beaver Creek? I don't know. Something like that, Ohio. I'm at a Speedway gas station, the same one that was my last rest stop on the way into Fort Wayne. It's not raining. It's a few clouds in the sky, but it's much warmer than it was yesterday. Much nicer than it was on the ride from here to Fort Wayne on Friday night. And it's interesting. I've seen all the wind turbines along the road for a ways there back in Indiana. I think most of them were in Indiana, which of course I couldn't see because it was so dark and it was raining when I was going in. But just made a pit stop here, used the bathroom, bought some water, and I'm getting ready to take off. My next stop's going to be, I think it's going to be at Sheetz? No, it's going to be another Speedway in Columbus. That's probably a good 80 miles or something like that. I've come about 75 so far. And let's see, it is... No, wait a minute, what am I doing? It is about 10 after 3 right now. Yep. So, not hungry enough to eat anything else just yet, but I definitely needed some water. And so I need to check and make sure I know exactly where... Well, actually, I know where I'm turning off. I'm turning off on Sawmill Road, which is exit 20 off of... I think it's 270 on the north side of Columbus. So that's my next stop. So that's it for now. Yep, that's it for now. Appleseed Comic-Con Road Trip Part 2. Return to DC. I'm at my second rest stop in Columbus, Ohio, at a Speedway gas station, convenience store, and pretty uneventful to drive from the previous Speedway. Well, I did get a little turned around at one point driving from... It's that getting off of Route I-75, getting onto getting onto Route 117. It's just, I missed a turn, and I figured out by looking at my phone, I figured out where I was, and then made a left and got back onto 117, because I wasn't on 117, but I didn't go less than a mile before I realized that I was going the wrong way. I was going east when I should have been going southeast. Yeah, something like that. Let's see, right now I'm listening to Art of Wrestling, the latest episode, which is with Chris Hero. Good interview. I like the show. I don't watch wrestling, but I like this show. I've been listening for probably a year or more now. And before that, I was listening to Kojo Namdi, an episode from last week, on jazz in D.C. and the D.C. archives. Not to be confused with the National Archives in Washington, D.C. at the city's archives. Let's see, what else? When I tried listening to a podcast from the Deliberate Noise Network, Marvel Bronze Age or something like that, I listened for a little while, maybe a half hour, maybe 45 minutes. Had trouble getting into it. I mean, I think they spent a little too long on a single issue. I mean, yeah. On my podcast, I say I don't like to go page by page or panel by panel, and I think that's kind of what they were doing. And even if your commentary is interesting, it seems like a little bit of overkill. That's my opinion. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but if it offends, I'm sorry. Well, if it offends, it's the way it is. But that's not my style, and that's not. I want something that moves a little faster, I guess. I've got a short attention span. So that's about it. So I'm still listening to The Art of Wrestling. I'll probably listen to. Maybe I think I've got an episode of Soundcheck for WNYC, and then maybe a comic book podcast, something else. After that, let's see, what have I got coming up here? I've got an episode of CGS, Comic Geek Speak, and also 11 o'clock comics. Yeah, maybe I'll listen to one of those next. But my next stop is Buckeye Lake Brewery, which is not that far a drive. It's only about 50 miles. And hoping to sample some of their beer and maybe pick up a growler. I still have that growler from Weasel Boy Brewing Company in my cooler. Hopefully it's staying cool. And let's see, I'm 164 miles in, and I'm about 3 hours into the drive home. And I've been here for almost 15 minutes. I need to get going. Okay, talk to you later. Appleseed Con road trip, stop number 3. I'm at Buckeye Lake, at the Buckeye Lake Brewery. Just had a half pint of stout, their oatmeal stout, which was quite good. And I bought a 32-ounce growler from them. Getting ready to get back on the road. I've started to listen to the latest episode of Comic Geek Speak. I think it's the latest. Let's see what else. I listened to an episode of Soundcheck on Brazilian music. And now I'm trying to decide whether I should drive all the way to Wheeling, or to the Sheets and the Panera, which are in Wheeling, which is about 110 miles. Or if I should stop in Cambridge, which is what I was thinking of doing, which is about 50 miles away, about halfway between here and Wheeling. And I'll have to put gas in the car once I get to Wheeling, down to about a quarter tank. I think I can make it to Wheeling. Let's see, that'll be 320 miles plus whatever I did. 550 plus about 100. Yeah, I think I can make it. I think I can make it to Wheeling. So I'm going to get a bite to eat there and put gas in the car, and then it'll be into Pennsylvania and then back to West Virginia and then Maryland. So it is just after 6 o'clock. It's about 6:05 right now. I've been on the road for a little over 4 hours, about 4 hours and 10 minutes. And I've been here for a little over 20 minutes. But I think it's time to move on. I think I'm doing pretty good as far as stop time goes. Let's see, 20, 40... maybe a little under 50 minutes right now as far as stop time goes. I'm trying to keep it under 2 hours. So I think I'm doing pretty good. But the next stop's going to be a long one. Or at least they'll stop in Wheeling. So anyway, that's it for now. Next stop, who knows? Maybe Cambridge, maybe Wheeling. I think more likely it's going to be Wheeling, or actually Triadelphia. Appleseed Comic-Con road trip, stop number 4. I'm in Triadelphia, West Virginia, near Wheeling, West Virginia. I'm at a Panera Bread. I just had a bite to eat, a Mediterranean flatbread. Also finally had some of those spring rolls that I bought back in Fort Wayne. Had one of them. I think that's enough to hold me for now. Still need to get some gas. I'm going to drive over to the Sheets and get some gas, and then I'm going to take off. I just finished listening to the latest episode of CGS, Comic Geek Speak. I'm starting to listen to an episode of WTF, this past Thursday's episode. The sun is going down. It's a little after 8 o'clock. I'm a little more than 6 hours I've been on the road now. I think I'm doing pretty good time-wise. I don't have any other major stops planned. I think this gas should be enough to get me home. I only have about 300 miles to go, and I can usually get about $4.50 on a tank of gas. Anything else? Yeah, nothing else really. I'm hoping it won't be more than another 6 hours to get home. I think I can be home in another 5 or so. So the next stop is going to be another Sheets. Well, I'm gonna go get gas, and then once I get on the highway, my next stop will be about 77 miles, something like that. And it'll be another Sheets, this time in just outside of Morgantown, West Virginia. So I'm going to cut into Pennsylvania, and then turn south, and then I'm going to come back into West Virginia, and that's my next stop. Appleseed Comic-Con road trip part 2, rest stop number 5. I'm in Morgantown, West Virginia. I'm at a Sheets. Just used the bathroom. About ready to go. Next stop's going to be Cumberland, Maryland. I'm just about done listening to WTF. I think I'm going to listen to a little Bookworm. And then I'm going to start in on 11 o'clock comics, but I got a feeling I'm going to get home before I'm done with that. I'm not sure how long this week's episode was. But I'm thinking I don't have more than about 3 hours. Well, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know, it's approaching 10 o'clock, I think, right now. Let me see. It is. Yeah, it's about 9:45. So 3 hours would put me 11, 12, 1:15. I don't know if I'm going to be home that fast. But I don't have any extended stops planned. I just want to stretch my legs, use the rest rooms. That's about it. I don't think I'm going to need gas before I get home. Tank is still fairly full. I think that's about it. I mean, it's dark out here now, of course. Something I wanted to say about that last trip, that last leg. Well, I did drive all the way. I did skip Cambridge, Ohio. Oh, I guess it's nice to see the hills again, although at night it's a little more dangerous going through the mountains of West Virginia and Pennsylvania and eventually into the mountains of the Panhandle of Maryland, because the roads twist and turn a lot, and they're not really well lit. At least it's not raining. Yeah, I'm definitely grateful that it's not raining. But, so I'm going to hit the road. I've been here about 10 minutes now, and I think it's time to move on, get back onto Route 68, I-68, and keep heading east. Appleseed Comic-Con road trip, part 2, rest stop number 6. Getting a little tired. I actually yawned a couple times during this last stretch. I'm in Cumberland, Maryland. I'm at the same Sheets that I stopped at on the way out. Used the bathroom once again. Been drinking water pretty consistently on this drive. And I had the second of those spring rolls, the other spring roll that I bought at that Vietnamese place back in Fort Wayne. Let's see, I have traveled almost 470 miles now. I've been on the road for over 9 hours, about 9 hours and 20 minutes right now. I've been here for about 12 minutes now. Getting ready to get back on the highway. I'm going to make one more stop before I get home. I've got about 130 miles to go, I think. 125, 130 miles. I'm going to stop in Hagerstown, Maryland, same place I stopped on the way out. I'm listening to 11 o'clock comics now. I think I'll have enough time to finish it off before I get home. If not, I should be very close. And I probably won't have time to listen to anything else. I'll be very close even if I do finish it off. So I think that's about it. There was something else I thought of that I wanted to say. Thought of earlier, but of course I didn't write it down. But this has been one hell of a trip. I mean, I'm not there yet, but I'm over 2/3 of the way home. I'm probably 3/4 of the way home, and this has been one hell of a trip. It's 50% more driving than the drive down to Charlotte for Heroes Con, which I'll be doing in about a month. And it's a real adventure. But I think, and I've said this before, but breaking it up the way I have has really worked out well, has really helped. And the fact that it's not raining tonight really helps. Yeah. So that's about it for now. Next stop, Hagerstown. Appleseed Comic-Con Road Trip Part 2. Rest stop number 7. Dave's getting a little tired. It's about 12:30, half past midnight. Been on the road for, well, over 10 and a half hours, about 10 hours and 40 minutes now. This is my last rest stop. I'm about 65 miles from home. Legs are sore. I'm tired. I've been yawning. I'm beat. I'll be so glad to get home. It's been one hell of a trip, but I will be so glad to get home. And I'm still listening to 11 o'clock comics. I got about 15 minutes left on that. It's probably going to take me about 75 minutes to get home, so I should finish that off with some time to spare. Probably sometime when I'm rolling down 270 towards 495. Yeah. I'm almost there. Been in Maryland for a while now, and I figure, I should be home by about 1:45, I think. If it's 12:30 now, and 75 minutes, about 1:45. So next stop, home. I'll probably post something on the internet about being home, but I'm not sure if I'm going to record tonight. I'll probably leave that till the morning. So that's it from Hagerstown. Appleseed Comic-Con Road Trip Part 2. Over! I'm home. Sitting in the car. Just taking a moment. I'm home. The Beltway traffic was non-existent. It almost didn't look like the Beltway. I couldn't tell that it was the Beltway. But it's about 1:45. So it took me about 11 hours and 50 minutes to get home. Because I think I left about 1:55 p.m. and it's now about 1:45 a.m. Yeah, nothing else really to report. Just got to unpack the car, put stuff away. I'm sure my downstairs neighbor isn't going to appreciate that, but oh well, I'm not leaving my stuff in the car. Sure am glad I decided to take today, I guess it's today off. Because I would be a mess at work. I'd be no good. I don't know, even if I slept in half the day and went in for half a day, I don't know if I'd be much use. Anyhow, glad to be home. Undecided whether I want to do this trip again. I don't think I could do a longer trip like this by myself. Well, I could, but this is pretty taxing. Anyhow, I want to go inside and take my stuff in and take a leak and put my beer away in the fridge, and I'll probably leave everything else till tomorrow morning. So, good night, everybody. Appleseed Comic-Con 2014 wrap-up. Okay, so I've been home for, less than a day now. I guess about 18 hours, 20 hours, something like that. Got a decent night's sleep, and I've posted pictures of the stuff I bought, both the artwork and the books I bought. I've listened to all the recordings I made, all the recordings that came before this in this podcast episode. There's one correction, which is that when I was talking about the stuff I bought from Kingbone Press, and this is apparent from the pictures I took, the two books I bought for $15, that was low concept. It was low concept. And they also threw in Banthology 2, I believe. The restaurant I ate at on Saturday night was Seoul Garden, and that Seoul is in the city Seoul in South Korea. And it's like I said before, it's a South Korean Chinese place. And I wrote a review of that I posted on Yelp, and I'll try to link to that in the show notes. The other place I ate was Banh Mi Barista, and that was very good. Like I said, okay, so pictures are all up. I'm going through some notes I wrote down here. I want to thank all the people I talked to. It was great meeting you all. The Kingbone Press guys, John Westhoff, John Dudley, Don Cardenas, John and Tim O'Brien, other people from the 11 O'Clock Comic Forums, Cam Smalley, Mr. Great Expectations himself, Jerry, and other people I talked to. I don't know if I don't know who's listening to this, but other people I talked to that I mentioned before. It was a lot of fun, and it was a lot more fun than I don't think it was more fun. I wasn't sure what to expect, and it was a great show. And of course, the most credit I think has to go to Zach Cruzy for pulling that all together. I think he did a great job and deserves a lot of credit. And I think a lot of people are thanking him for it. So I just want to add my voice to that. And I really would like to do this again next year. The drive is a real challenge, but I kind of enjoyed that challenge. And I certainly enjoyed the beer I brought back. I've started to dip into that. The two growlers of beer from Weasel Boy Brewing Company and from Buckeye Lake Brewing Company. And if you get a chance, they're both right off of I-70, and they're not that far from each other, maybe 30 miles from each other, in mid-Ohio. but it's good stuff. It's good stuff. If I go next year, if I drive next year, I'll definitely have to stop at those places again and get refills. But I think that's about it. I'm throwing everything. I threw everything into this podcast. I'm going to put some timestamps in there, but yeah, I had a great time. And next con that I'm going to is Heroes Con, which is about a month away. And I'll be driving to that too. It's a shorter drive by about 4 hours. And I've already got my hotel set. I've already got my tickets for the show, paid for, and figuring out where I'm going to eat. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of the same people again. I'm pretty sure Cam said he'll be there, and John and Tim should be there, and I'm pretty sure there's some other people from the 11 O'Clock Comics Forum, some of whom I may have met before, who might be there, and probably some who I haven't met before. So I think that's it for Appleseed Comic-Con. I still have yet to dig into any of these books, but I hope to do that, and I hope to not take too long, because I bought a ton of stuff, and I spent I didn't really spend more than I wanted to. I spent about $200 at the show, just at the show, not counting what I paid for gas or the hotel room or food. Just at the show, I spent about $200, and really that's not too bad, and I think about 60% of that was on books, and about 40% of it was on art. And I really only got 3 art pieces, unless you count the pieces in the books that the pieces, the sketches that the artists did, that Dave Wachter and Lee Chirolis did in the books that I bought from them. So that's it for Appleseed Comic-Con 2014. I hope everybody who was there had as good a time as I did, and if you weren't there, you should really think about going next year, because it's a small show. It's not an overwhelming show. It's not overly crowded, but there's some great creators there. There's some great stuff there. And there's some great people there. Even the people who don't have tables, there's some great people there. So it's my idea of a great show. I know some people need to be overwhelmed, and sure, Fort Wayne isn't New York or Chicago, but it's still got some nice places to eat, and it's a great city, and I think it's worth a try. And you don't have to drive 12 hours like I did to get there, but I think it's worth trying at least once. And once again, thanks to Zach for pulling it all together. Great job, and I'm looking forward to next year's show, and I really hope I can make it. That's it for episode 22 of Dave Talks Comics. Questions or comments can be posted on the episode page at davetalkscomics.com, or tweet them to @DaveTalksComics. You can email your questions or comments to dave@davetalkscomics.com. Next time, it'll be back to the regular sort of fare, which means me talking about stuff I've read and possibly stuff I've watched, maybe some cartoon talk.